All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's webinar about the longitudinal systems analysis. That's a long word. The LSA report update and ClientTrack. This is something that we've been working on feverishly. Today we have a couple of our experts from the Eccovia team to walk you through. Just a couple of housekeeping items really quick. If we could go back. Yeah. So if you want to ask any questions, please use the chat function. We will make this webinar available via YouTube and also email. And we will also include a Q&A doc that summarizes the answers and questions to the most pertinent questions at the end of the webinar. And we will make that available via email in the coming days. We'll also send you the slide deck so you can review the information that is being presented today. So if you have any issues with connectivity or with the webinar, unfortunately, there's not much that we can do on our end to solve that in the meantime. So you can always contact your client success manager at Eccovia if you have any issues. We will many of our client success people are here on the call today as well. But if you have any technical issues, then your best bet would be to wait for the recording and to contact your CSM if you have any outstanding questions that don't get answered here. Okay, so today we are going to first off introduce the people that you'll be learning from today, who will give an overview of the LSA, the timeline, preemptively answer any frequently asked questions that we anticipate. Chris will also be giving us a demo, and at the end we will have a Q&A. If you have any questions that are easily answered in a short amount of time, then we will pause intermittently throughout the presentation. But if it's a more detailed answer, then we'll save that for the Q&A at the end. So let's meet our presenters. So Jessica is a product analyst here at Eccovia. She leads the development of HMIS solutions within ClientTrack and assists in implementing more streamlined HMIS processes. She graduated with a BA from Duquesne University and has worked closely with HMIS for more than 7 years in various roles. Chris is a database engineer here at Eccovia with 6 years experience throughout various engineering capacities, including tech support, implementation, platform implementation, and interoperability. He holds a Bachelor of Business Administration from Utah Valley University here local in Utah. So without further ado, I will, just as a reminder for those who are just coming in, if you have any questions, put them here in the chat. If they can be answered quickly, we will pause intermittently throughout the presentation. Otherwise, we will answer them at the end during the Q&A section. So let's take it away. Jessica, I believe you're starting us off.
I think I am. Yep. Hi, everybody. I missed you all. It has been so many weeks since DSU kind of wrapped up, so I am happy to be back talking to everybody. We are going to talk through what the LSA is, just to make sure everybody is oriented. If you were on the HUD call yesterday, then this might be some repetition, but the HUD call did allow me to make sure that I was giving you the correct information, so thank goodness for that. So LSA, what is it? It can be some like alphabet soup almost in talking through it. So we wanted to make sure that anybody who's new to HUD reporting is aware. LSA is a systems level report that is at the COC level. It is going to detail out how people and households are served by continuum of care projects throughout the year. This is also any HMIS participating project. Anybody who's in your HMIS system should be included in the LSA. And it includes details about individuals' demographic information, their length of time that they've been homeless, patterns of use through the system, and different subpopulations served, and where they may have exited to. So LSA is quite a large report. There are so many different pieces to the puzzle. So this is sometimes can be a little bit like whack-a-mole. The second you fix an issue, a new error might pop up. And so we're going to talk through kind of like what LSA season really looks like. And then like Bryce mentioned, Chris is going to get into the demo to actually show how to generate an LSA and how to help problem solve some of the issues that will pop up. So this was mentioned yesterday also on the HUD call, but I just want to make sure that everybody is aware. LSA is one piece of a larger puzzle. So LSA is, I think they refer to it as part 2 of the AHAR. So LSA pairs alongside the housing inventory chart, or the HIC, and the point in time count, or the PIT. All 3 of these things are then combined, and that makes up the annual homeless assessment report. That annual homeless assessment report goes over to Congress and helps inform strategic initiatives and funding decisions for future years. So LSA is very important. We want to make sure that your usability is as high as possible. We want to make sure that we're not having any programming issues related to LSA that would make your LSA less usable. So I just wanted to make sure that you're all aware. You'll see some flags that will probably pop up. I think 684 is one that's sticking out to me from previous years that says your housing inventory chart and your LSA inventory don't match. That was the bane of my existence as an admin. I am sure that it will be the bane of some of yours, but this is why having that be the same and also the logic for the LSA kind of takes that into account just because it's part of the larger AHAR. So I just wanted to make sure that that was stated because I absolutely did not know my first LSA season that LSA was part of the bigger report. So who does LSA impact? So there's 3 main pieces here. Obviously vendors, we are working through updating all of the different specs, making sure that there's not going to be any timeout issues for you all, depending on your database size. We're testing all of our updates, and we're developing new data quality tools so that you all have an easier time in problem solving some of the errors that are going to pop up. As much as we may strive, data quality is never going to be 100%. So there's always going to be issues and errors that pop up. So we want to make sure that you have access to the data as quickly and easily as possible so that you can find those really easily. That also means then that the next group that is heavily impacted by this, probably arguably the most impacted, is all of you, COC and HMIS leads. You all are working through all of the different data quality tools. You're looking at project setup, you're looking at individual project information, and you're iterating consistently through the LSA cycle just to make sure that you're uploading, getting those errors, and then you're either working to correct that data or write out those very detailed explanations in the back and forth a lot with the LSA liaisons that you all have. And then, like I said, you're also coordinating with project level users. So you all would be the ones that are able to see the big picture, and then you're helping filter that down into the individual project level users. And then once you get over to the project level users who are also impacted, you are trying to get them to sort of work through some of that project level data quality. If they've got specific clients that have missing information, client doesn't know, client prefers not to answer, or data not collected, trying to fill in as much of that information as possible. So these are the 3 main groups of people, which are pretty much the main 3 players for most of our updates, but just to kind of give context of how everybody here is working together on the same team, just to make sure that all of your LSAs can get updated and used. I mentioned this before, but the LSA cycle, this is something that I want to make sure everybody is kind of aware of. You can kind of start anywhere in this circle, but we're going to start up at the top with the review data quality. Reviewing data quality is really the very first thing that has to be done. There should be a CE participation CE participation status for every project. There should be an HMIS participation status for every project. All of those PDDEs need to be filled out. Client data quality level reports. There should be as minimal missing data or incorrect data as possible. You all know this already, but that will really help as you're generating your LSA report in the next step of the LSA cycle. And then uploading that into HDX 2.0. And as you're uploading into HDX 2.0, you're then getting those flag files of different errors and warnings. And then at that point, you enter the sub-process basically of having to figure out where is that incorrect data coming from? Is that a programming issue? Is that a data quality issue? Does the data actually look correct? And you just need to write an explanation. So that is really the key piece of the LSA cycle there is that top left-hand piece of the cycle is really figuring out what exactly is happening with the different flags. And then that just leads right back into reviewing your data quality and having to generate a new LSA and re-upload and go through that process again. This is an iterative process, so we do expect that you will have to run this multiple times. And so I do just want to stress that trying to upload and work on those errors as soon as possible is going to be beneficial, I think, for everybody. One, just so that you all know what your data looks like, especially with the holidays coming up. There are going to be a lot of people in and out of the office. I know we are also feeling that, so we just want to make sure that we're all kind of as on top of things as possible. And we also will be just trying to keep track of any flags that we get, and also who's already uploaded, who's still having issues getting an upload accepted. We did get news already after releasing the LSA on Tuesday that we did have 3 different communities that have already had successful uploads into HDX 2.0, which is great news. So I'm very excited about that. But we do know that that's just going to continue to iterate over and over again. So just highlighting what that LSA cycle is going to look like. I absolutely stole this from the HUD call yesterday, but there are a couple of key dates that we should pay attention to. The first being Monday, which is when LSA, of course, launched for communities to start uploading into HDX 2.0. And then they have an interim benchmark for November 29th. That's when you should have had at least one successful upload by. That doesn't mean that there aren't any errors or flags. That just means that it was accepted and you are now able to see your errors or flags. So we will be working really hard to make sure that if there's any programming issues or anything for LSA, that those are all addressed so that you all can meet that deadline and hopefully well exceed that deadline. Then as we roll into December, there is another interim benchmark. I don't think that HUD necessarily outlined what that interim benchmark is, but we're keeping an eye on that and are aware of that so that we can make sure that whatever that deadline is, everybody here is able to hit it. And then that will help us as we roll into January. For January 17th is when LSA, of course, is officially due. So we want to make sure that through November and December, we're supporting you all as much as possible to hopefully mitigate some of the last minute kind of crises that can happen as those deadlines near. So just making sure that you all are aware of what those interim deadlines are actually looking like.
We have a couple of quick questions, I believe. A couple of people, Chris just noted, but a couple of people said that their LSA is taking a few hours to run. One, Benjamin saying it took 2.5 hours, and then Matthew saying it took 7 hours. Is this expected? And if so, why does it run so slowly? Chris answered that this is typical.
Yes, to add to that, this is pretty expected to take a long time because of how complex it is, it does have to go through a lot of logic. We've heard from many communities that it is taking longer than expected, and it does cause delays with other reports. Do keep this in mind when scheduling your LSAs to make sure you're not repeatedly running the same one before getting an LSA returned, because it can cause delays in other reports such as the APR. So we typically advise to run it overnight. You can run it and expect to get it back by the morning without causing too much of an impact to other active reports. So we are continually improving it and trying to get it faster. If anybody remembers 4 or 3 years ago, we've definitely come a long way, but it's a continual effort to speed it up and get you guys your LSAs. So
Thank you.
And just to piggyback off of what Chris said, also the size of your database will greatly impact how long it takes. So an individual agency organization will have a much quicker runtime for LSA than a multi-COC implementation that may have more than one LSA trying to be generated at the same time. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. But we are working to make sure that there aren't any timeout issues or anything like that for you all. I am going to go over to the frequently asked questions. So these are some questions that we have that we kind of anticipated and want to make sure that you all have answers to before we kind of move forward. First question is, when will the Calculated Explorer tool be available? Last year it was a little bit delayed, so we have made sure Calculated Explorer is available to you all in the LSA space. Chris will be doing a demo on that here very shortly. What about other queries or data quality tools to be able to help all of you actually find those clients behind the errors? We are working on getting either the exported queries over to you all or building them into baseline so that you have access to them as quickly as possible. So we are working on that. We just wanted to make sure that we got the LSA itself out to you as soon as possible. But we will keep you updated as those things become available. And then what can we be doing now and how do we access it? So that's exactly what Chris is about to talk about. So he is going to do a demo of the LSA space as well as the Calculated Explorer tool. And then in addition to that, we are working on some how-to guides of how to use the Calculated Explorer. How can you use some of those data quality tools to help find the issues that might be related to LSA flags that you're actually receiving. And then did we keep the log of common flags? So we do have some of the common flags and the fixes from how we did things last year. And we're trying to make those available on the Eccovia knowledge base as we are able. So I actually want to use that as a point to stop sharing the PowerPoint really quickly and heading over to the Eccovia knowledge base. So for those of you, I love a good knowledge base article. Those of you who participated in DSU, you can go to help.eccovia.com and click on that ClientTrack button. That's then going to take you down and you'll find this HMIS section here. This is where all of our LSA related items are going to be posted. We've got this one here, which is the LSA itself. So this is going to be your overview. We will talk through what the LSA is, what LSA season actually is with a copy of the cycle, any important dates that we have, and then just to make this as easily readable as possible, this is how to access the LSA, how to submit your flag files if you need that, and then also helpful links. So as we're getting new knowledge base articles, we'll be able to link those down here for you. And then we've also tried to put any of the HUD LSA related resources here as well. And one thing I did want to point out really quickly is this LSA known issues and flags. This is going to be similar to the DSU known issues page. I'm trying to make this a little bit more readable, but we did have 2 issues that have popped up that are now posted here. So that's just for you to be able to keep track of everything. And I've also, just so that everybody knows when it was most recently updated, trying to keep this as up to date as possible for you, but also if it was a weekend, you want to know that it was updated on Friday and not yet on Monday. So that's also there for you. I am going to hand it over to Chris now for the LSA Space and Calculated Explorer demo.
Thanks so much, Jessica. I am going to share my screen so that we can cover running LSA and getting to the point where we can run it through the Calculated Explorer. I did want to address a couple of concerns around emergency shelter projects not getting included. We are urgently working on a resolution for this, and it should be updated and resolved before this weekend. So look out for updates around that. But to get into the LSA, we are operating from our workspace called LSA Space. This was an introduction to ClientTrack last year to improve the visibility into our calculated CSV. This has been the one of our most successful additions to LSA and resolving and troubleshooting problems in the calculated. So to get started, I am in our LSA Space work group. Our report launch form should still be, I mean, it's still available in the other HMIS work groups, but this lets us work on LSA specific stuff. And we'll also include some updated tools later on in the season. To get started, we are on our dashboard and we'll look through our LSA basics. And we can go to our LSA export form where we can launch. Many of you have already gone through this process, just kind of covering this. So I'll start from the same point of reference, and we'll make sure by default our report start and end date should be set to the previous fiscal year. Although if it's not, or if one of the dates is changed, we'll see a message, a little warning saying that this won't be valid for official submission. So do make sure that message is not available, or is not visible. Otherwise, you could run into problems for an official submission. For all of our submissions, we advise system-wide, but you can use project focused to look at project specific data. And then we'll select our CFC. This will probably be limited to what CFCs are available in your environment. So we'll just do that, and we will run our export here. You can encrypt it using a password. In this case, we're just working out of a demo environment. There's no real client data. So we will just export as is and hit done. This will queue up your LSA to be run. Now, it's important to remember that there's 2 primary stages of the LSA. There is the preload stage, which is going to do all of the complex calculations and get your data to the point where it's ready for an LSA specific export CSV. Now, I want to highlight this because this has been a common question and confusion in the past. ClientTrack will generate 2 zip files for this, and we're going to just look at my messy files on the server, but there's some key distinction to look for when you're going to upload your LSA, when you go to download the export. So we have our HMIS LSA 2024 preload there's a formatted date and time, attached to a task ID. This preload, you can download this if you're trying to investigate potential issues within your LSA. During each step of the LSA, we have 11 major sections, ultimately 9, that you'll really want to look at if you're trying to debug. So we tried to populate our preload with a lot of data, but it's more for someone who's willing to dig through the data and look out for what issues they're trying to look for. What we're really wanting to export or download to upload to HDX is one that says HMIS LSA 2024 export and not the preload. So once we've downloaded our export, once it's run through, you'll have to wait for the preload to finish, and then it's going to queue up a separate asynchronous task to run the export. So do make sure to wait for that export to be fully finalized. And once you can download that, I'm going to switch over to HDX really quick. Hopefully most of you are, I mean, whoever would be submitting to HDX are familiar with it. But when we are going to our LSA tab for HDX, we can select Upload New. Once we go through Upload New, we're going to be brought to a page where we can upload that export zip that we downloaded. Many people, I would even recommend once you download it, renaming it to the COC if you're a multi-COC agency, to rename it to the COC. We can always look back at the asynchronous task history to kind of associate that if you do lose track of that COC. But once we upload that and name it, we can choose to upload. So I already uploaded using that name. So, oh man. All right, let's just run that again. And we will get a processing. It should only take a couple minutes to come back as rejected or accepted, and we'll come back to that in just a second. If you're going back to the application, if you're wanting to monitor while your LSA is run, there's this LSA async tasks, which will show you all the asynchronous tasks related to the LSA. You can see our preloads, which in the name it'll show who ran it for which COC, and then we'll have our export tasks, which also include who ran it as well as the COC, and then the preload task ID. So that's going to tell you which task this export is associated to, and you can look that up. You can just do a search on that or enter that task ID into the filter. Once that's run, they also become available in the LSA report runs page, where we just kind of see a general, it's just kind of a general control point for all of the LSA runs that you've done. This is mostly important to those with multi-COCs. We do store the LSA related data that went into calculating your entire LSA in some archive tables, and we do store that limit. We do store some of that data, but it's important to remember that when you run a second LSA for a specific COC, that during the nightly, there's a nightly cleanup procedure that will clean that data up. If you're wanting to retain a certain set of data, you can select this action button and retain run, and that will ensure that it doesn't get deleted during that nightly procedure. So this does contribute to database size. The LSA does use a lot of data, so it is important to go back and update those once you're done with your LSA runs to no longer retain them, and you can do that by doing the same thing, setting for removal. And It will retain the latest LSA per COC. And if you are concerned about database size, please reach out to our support. We can clear out that data. There's this form. We do also have the descriptor quick glance. Unfortunately, it's not quite updated to there was some final issues we were trying to work out with it for the 2024 standard, but we will do we'll include some release notes once we get that updated, and that helps us identify descriptor data that is not getting included in the LSA that you may expect to be included. So, all right, if we jump back over to HDX, we can see our upload was accepted. From here, we can view the data set and the warnings, view the flag report, and I already have some example opened up here. So we're looking for we're gonna work on showing you the calculated explorer tool that we built. This lets you kind of do a deep dive into these aggregates in a calculated CSV in previous years, and for many these are, it's kind of a black box where you don't really get a look into what's being counted or what's being averaged. So we built out a tool last year to really try to open that up and add a lot more visibility, transparency into the calculated. So when we are looking at our flag, we'll notice a couple of key things. This is again related specifically to the LSA calculated flags. And we are going to look for, if included, project ID is important. Report row, it'll provide these filters. These I'll show you these in a second. Report row, cohort, HH type, population. These are all parameters we're going to enter into our calculated explorer so that we can start to look at what's being counted there. So if we open up our LSA tools, household issues is an upcoming tool that will be released in a later update. I had that open incorrectly. All right. So if we switch over to LSA tools, calculated explorer. Oh, let me take a step back. If you don't see any data appear on the entity toolbar, I should say the COC, the report, task ID, the start and end and export date. It's important to select a COC that you're working with. Even if you're a single COC organization, agency, you'll still need to go over to the COC select and select any COC that you're going to be working with. And this plugs into the calculated explorer. So once we've selected our COC, it's going to default in the latest report ID. But if you have multiple report runs retained, as I showed off earlier, you can switch between the two on the filter. So you can start to compare prior runs to the current run. So if we pull in some of these parameters, cohort equals 1, household type equals 2, population is 53 for chronically homeless adults, and report row of 55. You can also enter the project ID, but this project ID will not align with my demo environment. So now that we've entered in those parameters, it's also probably going to compare it to another set of parameters. Say, hey, these two calculated rows don't exactly match up, or the totals between them don't exactly add up. So if you get a lot of the calculated flags are very specific about what it is. So a lot of the times you'll need to read through the description and try to get an understanding of what it's trying to say. In this case, it's saying that people with characteristics equal to 0 and people in households with that characteristics aren't matching up. So we can enter these points in and could do a comparison, but to open up to see who is being counted or what is being counted, we can click this button, View Value Data. And this will show you everybody that went into this count. There are some things that may not make a lot of sense here to everybody. This is more of an advanced feature. We are working on building out a key to make it a little more friendly. But off the bat, I mean, I hope you'd recognize the client ID, which is important. Our relevant table. This is an LSA specific table, what it's related to. So we're in this calculated measure, we're looking at our enrollment table primarily, and our personal ID, which translates to client ID and ClientTrack. Our relevant ID, which you can see matches up with our client ID, and same with relevant data. Relevant ID is going to be the way that you may find this particular record. In this case, it's our client ID. And then our relevant data is what was actually counted. And I will show you some variants in that. This is pretty straightforward with who we need to look at. And then there's also a button to go to the client, and it'll open up the client workspace. I'm not going to do that today, but I highly encourage everybody to go in and start playing around with Calculated Explorer. And then the reason why it opens up in a separate window within the application is so that we can open up other pages and start to look at the differences. Now, this case, we're not specifically looking to resolve anything, but that is how you access and view the data. So there is that. The other thing I wanted to point out, we've been expanding in compliance with the updated specifications. We have been expanding the data quality aspect of Calculated, again, per the specs. And as part of that, included in this, you'll sometimes get a better hint at what the data quality problem is. And these are related to step 10. You'll see these steps, and these are the steps that you can relate them back to the specifications. Ooh, so sorry, I'll maximize this. So section 10 is our calculated data quality portion. And I tried to give some more hints into what the data quality problem is. So in this particular instance, our months homeless in the past 3 years is 99, data not collected. And our relevant ID is related to our enrollment ID. So we can use this as an indicator of which enrollment to look at by enroll ID, and then our client ID that enrollment's related to. And you can go to that client, look for that enrollment, and step through the workflow. Again, this is something that we are continuously trying to improve. So if you have any feedback, please let us know. We want to make this a more powerful tool for everyone to use. This is not something that is required by HUD. It's not even something that they put out. This is just something of my own conception last year, and I'm not a UI designer, so please, anything we can do to make this easier. I did add some more some hints to what these fields might mean. If you're really into exploring the data, our relevant table does add some information about how to access this data via Query Designer. It's important to remember that because we archive this data after our LSA run, that there's a separate set of tables. So if it says LSA 2024 _ enrollment, you'll actually want in Query Designer, to use that table with the suffix of _archive. That's going to be your archive data where all of that data is stored. And then it's also important to add a filter of report ID equals your report ID to make sure you're looking at the same set of data. But then you can filter this filter that by enrollment ID and look at these specific IDs. So this is for, again, a lot of data savvy people can look into this, but we're trying to make it more user friendly to give you a window of opportunity to diagnose and troubleshoot your own calculated data. Although, again, to emphasize, this is the LSA is a collaborative effort. If you're confused, if you don't know how to diagnose an issue, or you believe, if there's a vendor issue, please submit a support ticket so that our support team can triage it and escalate any issues up to me, and I'll be the one to make sure that these issues get resolved, and again, help with diagnosing or resolving any problems with the data or the LSA itself. Yes, your question, Matthew. Sorry, I haven't fully been following the questions, but Matthew, yes, to cover that again, a relevant table kind of indicates what the table in your database is called. Now, this is the table that the LSA operates off of, but at the end, once it's done processing your LSA, it will archive this data, and all of there's a table with _archive for every single LSA table. So if we're looking at LSA _2024 _enrollment, the table you query in Query Designer would be exactly this with _archive at the end of it. If you want to look at this hint, it tries to detail that. That to include, be sure to include the _archive to the suffix. I can actually just show you in Query Designer what that looks like. So if we open up Query Designer, say, and when we search for our table, we're going to look at LSA 2024. There's some old LSA tables, and you can see for every one of our tables, there's also an _archive table. And that's what you want to be looking at. So if I pull in this enrollment archive table that we were just looking at in the Calculate and Explore, you will need to rename this. Our Query Designer does not like the beginning part, integration dot. This is the schema for the LSA operates on, to keep it separated from the primary schema. But you'll just need to drop off that integration dot, and then it'll be acceptable again. You can rename the alias to remove the archive. That's okay. So it's up to you. But once we add that and save, we can now let's pull this back up and just show that how that works. Let's see, I'm just adding an asterisk, (1). This will just pull in all of the columns in this table. And then we want to look at, for the enrollment ID equals this value that is provided as a relevant ID. And we can run this query and see. Oh, I see. I didn't include the report ID filter. This was something that would be important to add, where we can say report ID equals. We're looking at 2. That's our latest one. And then we can look at that data. You can see all of the information related to this enrollment within our LSA. And we can see that our, let's see, this might be included as part of a different table, but this would be the enrollment we'd be looking for. And then if you need to add additional tables, we can definitely add those. So you can look up, let's say 2024 underscore, if you wanted to look at their exit data, we can tag those in together and look at that exit data. Well, they may not have an exit, but I hope you get that helps a little bit. So you can definitely play around with these and try to start piecing together some of the LSA. If you do reference the LSA specifications, that's going to be a great help. But again, it's a pretty deep document, and again, it's for if you're really wanting to dig deep into the LSA. It gets into some of the more advanced stuff. But just to reiterate, if you have any issues, please reach out to our support team, and they'll try to help you as soon as possible. And if there's any issues that arise, we want to make sure that we can resolve them as timely as possible, so we can have a successful LSA here. So thanks so much for listening, and that's all I got.
Thanks, Chris. I am gonna pop us back over to the webinar and talk through just one or two more things, and then we'll be all finished. Right, you saw that demo. Next up is just what the support plan is for LSA. So in a very similar vein to what we did for DSU, we will have weekly LSA office hours. The Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time on Teams. I actually have the invitation crafted and ready to be sent out to everybody in the community of practice. So you should be getting those invitations very soon. Those will be every Wednesday, and they will roll through the final submission day, so January 17th. There may be one that we have to cancel just due to the holidays, but those will be hosted. And then we will also have knowledge base articles. So there are two that are mostly written, just need a couple of finalized pieces. So those are going to be on the LSA space itself, and then also on the Calculated Explorer. So we're going to have a more detailed tool guide on how to actually use that tool. And then we'll also be figuring out what other knowledge base articles would be helpful to outline for you all, and adding those as we can. And then finally, we will have the external facing flag tracker, which is just basically the known issues page from the DSU. But it's now just specifically LSA focused. So there is going to be, you will be able to find it on eccovia.help.com, but we'll also share out the links to that as well. So that's kind of our support plan. And then in the similar vein, if you need to submit over your flags that you've received back, or you're receiving specific vendor flags, please share those over with us. You can do that via by submitting a support ticket. And when you submit a support ticket over, if you could add 2023 LSA and flag files into the subject line, that way our support team has easy filtering for what to do with those as they come in. And then make sure that you are clicking that checkbox for send to ClientTrack. Otherwise, that does not come over to us. It just stays local in your own system. So just make sure that that's there. And then if you have anything that you're looking, any specific flags or errors that you're finding that you would really like some assistance in digging down into, just make sure that that's detailed in the description of the ticket. And we will be working to kind of aggregate all of those that come in and update the known issues and flags page as often as possible. I think the goal is that if you have an issue around flag 648 and 3 other communities have the same flag issue, and we've identified a way to problem solve that or dig down into the data, that we can write a step by step so that it's easily accessed by everybody, so that you all aren't having to kind of recreate the wheel every time you're encountering something that perhaps other Eccovia customers have also encountered. So that's kind of the idea behind that, but we'll need to just make sure that you're submitting those support tickets over. And then I know I just saw a question pop up in the chat about this, but if you do not belong to the community of practice, please reach out to your client success manager. We can get you added. And then basically whoever's in the community of practice is who gets the invitations for the webinars, or not the webinars, I'm so sorry, for the office hours. So that is kind of the distribution list that we wind up using. So if you're not part of that, or you haven't previously received those invitations, please reach out to your client success team, and we'll be able to double check that you're all set up in there. So those are kind of coming out to you. And then as you also get a copy of the PowerPoint here, you'll also have access to all of the helpful links that we have here at the end. These are repeated as the same ones on the LSA knowledge base article. So you should also have access to that. Are there any outstanding questions or anything that we can ask, Bryce?
Yeah, we have a few. Some of them are highly individual, so I want to make sure which ones would be useful for everyone to know. But there was one question from Ashish that says, in our LSA report, I noticed that several projects from different COCs are listed. Is this normal?
Yeah, I was curious about that. I wasn't sure if it was in the report launch form or the final export itself. Typically the launch form will include projects that may be out of scope, but the LSA itself does filter it down to projects specifically in the COC. Now, if in the output you're seeing projects that don't belong to that COC, please submit a support ticket. I'd definitely be well, I definitely want to look into that to make sure that the LSA is not outputting it projects that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. So if that is the case, let us know. But we can also take the feedback to ensure that the report launch forms are also filtering that down to the projects included within that COC, just for visibility purposes. So that's a great question.
Wonderful, thank you. Linnell asks, will we be able to use EVA? We are not able to run any CSV exports.
I got some updates on that for Linnell. I think that the person handling your issue for support is actively trying to run a CSV export, so they're actively working on that. I think there have been some issues with the CSV exports actually generating, but once they are able to generate, they should be able to be uploaded to EVA. I know there have been some issues in the past with using EVA and null values and things like that. I think EVA has recently loosened some of their requirements for some of those null values. So we are fingers crossed that we will be able to use EVA just as soon as that CSV export correctly runs fully.
Wonderful. Stephanie asks, we were able to get a successful upload into HDX 2.0, but we did get the red banner error. She was wondering, have we heard whether there's something on the programming side causing the red banner error? That's the one that says there's an issue with the data quality checks on your data set.
Yeah, so when I looked up I looked that up on the Weebly page for HUD, and it did say that the liaisons can look into the red banner issue individually to see what the issue may be caused by, but they haven't been able to figure out what exactly is causing that. So I think that that is probably more of a HUD related issue that hopefully we'll get updated information on, but I don't think we have any other additional information at this time.
Right. Lindsay asks, we had a successful upload, but we also have 78 errors related to 2.08 HMIS part status. Maybe that's party. I'm not sure. It's telling us we have clients enrolled in the project during a period when the project was not participating, but the 2.08 start date matches the project start date. Could this be a vendor issue?
I think it would be worth submitting it through our support channels so that we can investigate it properly and ensure that our HMIS participation export is working in congruently with the project export. So yeah, please submit a support ticket so that we can investigate if it is a vendor issue or if it's something else. So we definitely want to try to figure that out.
Carrie asks, does the data in the archives table stay there forever? Or does it get cleared out periodically?
Yeah, so I answered that in the chat, but just to clarify, the calculated, or sorry, all the archive data for the latest report run is maintained within your database to enable your calculated explorer to work. Now, if you run another LSA for that same COC, overnight we do clear out the old runs data by default. So it only maintains one set of LSA data unless you go to that LSA report runs form and specifically mark an older run to retain. And you have until the nightly procedure runs to update that. Now, this is something that has been something I monitored quite a bit last year and I'm going to continue to monitor it this year, is the impact to your database. We understand how important that is because the LSA looks at so much data system-wide that it can cause the database size to grow if we continuously retain a lot of runs. So if you do notice or are concerned about the impact to your database, again, that would be a great reason to reach out to support. We want to continue to collect feedback around this and fine tune it better. So we didn't want to immediately just delete all of this archive data because the calculated explorer tool relies on it. But if we do need to look at specifically enhancing it so that there's more control, it's more in your control, then we can definitely do that. So please submit feedback. If you have concerns, again, reach out to our support and we'll help address any concerns you have. It's a great question though.
Understood. Folks, we are at time. We had a few outstanding questions. We recommend that you contact your client success manager for those, but we will also filter through and look at all of these questions and compile the most universally applicable ones so that everyone can get a summary of our answers to those questions. So everyone, let's give our presenters a big hand in the chat, such as it is. We appreciate your attendance. We appreciate what you do for your communities, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you. We will send you the info and follow-up email as soon as we can here in the next 2 or 3 business days. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.